So this is one of those stump the stars questions. What is something about hurricane hunting that would most surprise our listeners? What would sort of shock them to know?
So I think I alluded to this earlier, but the more intense the storm is, does not necessarily mean the rougher the ride. A category 5 tends to, I've had some passes through category 5 that were basically, you're kind of like, wait, we're already done. You hardly notice that you went through the eye wall because it was just smooth. Um, but by the same token, every time you fly through the eye of the hurricane, it's going to be different. So just because it was easy this time doesn't mean it's going to be the same experience next time. And so it could be smooth one time, and then it could be absolute some of the roughest pass you've had the next time. These storms are constantly evolving and changing, and the dynamics and just the way the thermodynamics and everything on them working is that they're constantly in a state of flux. And so they change every time. But by that, the storms that are still developing and strengthening, the category 1s, the tropical storms, category 2s, they tend to be very unpredictable. And that leads to a lot of turbulence. And just because you're in clear air in a hurricane doesn't mean that it's not going to be bumpy. A lot of this dry air starts to mix and cause a lot of turbulence as well. And so that can be surprising and definitely catch you off guard. So just because you're not in a thunderstorm or in a cloud doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth.
So did you ever land after a mission, Chris, and say, I'm kind of glad that one's over?
Yeah, there's, more than once. You're kind of like, wow, I'm really kind of happy this is over. My first time thinking that was during Ian, which was it was during my first season. It was making landfall into Central Florida, so it was impacting home as well. But one of the things that maybe folks don't realize is that hurricanes are not just uniform storms themselves. They also have storms inside of themselves. So Ian was a prime example of where we're going through the eye wall, and we encountered some mesocyclones that the radars couldn't pick up. And they couldn't pick them up because of attenuation. So we weren't able to see as far as we wanted to be able to see. And it definitely rocked the plane a good bit. It was definitely pretty dynamic and scary for a lot of the folks on board. Just because instead of doing just the standard up and down, we were taking a lot of side loads, which are generally unexpected in a thunderstorm. And so it was just a really, really rough ride. But we managed to get through it, reevaluated, went back in for another pass, and it was making landfall. So we decided to wave off and go back to our safe location, which was not in Florida.
I can really relate to Ian. I'm building a house in Florida, and the eye wall of that storm stalled over right where this house is for 5 hours, and so it was just devastating to Sanibel Island.
Yes,
and literally there was a house on this property that it just was no longer there. It was such a devastating hurricane. It's terrible.
Yeah, anybody who lives on a coastline could be impacted by a hurricane. And in fact, as we saw with Helene this year, even folks that are well inland can definitely have devastating effects from these hurricanes. So it's important to not only just pay attention to what's going on, but also make sure that you're listening to any sort of the advisories or your local emergency managers to make sure that you can make the right and safe decision. Because you don't have to be on the coast to have your house gone from a storm.
No, absolutely. I lived in Houston for 16 years and saw a few fun hurricanes down there. So we're going to wind down, but you commented that you guys are hiring and you're looking for people. So for the young people out there who are discovering that NOAA Corps is a thing from this podcast, what advice would you give them to prepare for such a career like this?
So the advice that I would give to somebody who wants to, possibly fly through hurricanes or, sail on any of our ships or anything else like that is, number one, go to college. It's a requirement to do what we're doing. Everybody is, as I mentioned, a commissioned officer. And so just like the Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., you got to have a college degree to do that. We do look for people who are capable of interfacing with the scientific community. And so as a consequence of that, we do want folks to have a fairly strong background in the STEM fields. So, take those science classes. Don't be afraid to take a programming class and math classes and stuff like that, and kind of get that baseline knowledge built up and available, so that not only can you just apply for us if that's your end goal, but also find your passion in those fields as well, so that even if this doesn't end up being your thing later on down the line, you still have something that you're excited and passionate about to kind of fall back on and to do the work for. So that would be my first two pieces of advice: is like, go to college, major in something that you're excited about, and take some science classes alongside of that. And then if after all of that you're like, I still want to do this, leadership opportunities, of course, are always great. We're looking for people who can interface well with the community. So opportunities for public speaking and stuff like that can really help make you well-rounded are most definitely going to be beneficial to anybody who's looking to join and do what we do.